Since starting running back on January the 1st, 2015 as a New Year's resolution, I've learned a lot along the way. There have been so many positive things that have come from running, but there are also some seriously hard truths that I've learned along the way. And today I want to be sharing 8 of them with you. So we'll kickstart this list of home truths by saying that progress isn't always linear. Now, when we start off as runners and we're beginners and we go from nothing to something, we often find that effectively we PB in whatever we do because A, we don't have PBs in that distance, but our bodies adapt very, very quickly and we start to get fit fast, and it's such a great feeling. Over time, over the years, we probably get to a point kind of like where I am now really, and for a lot of you guys out there, that you're training the most you can in terms of the number of hours in a week because you're fitting it all around commitments, family, work, whatever it might be. And then it becomes a case of training smarter and not harder. But sometimes, if we're all honest, we're all human and we don't quite get it right, and we might have a bad training block, a bad training few weeks, and we might not PB in a distance. And that can be for a variety of things. Maybe we've overtrained, maybe it's too hot, maybe it's too windy, maybe we're feeling under the weather. Whatever it might be, we're going to encounter setbacks. And this is what I mean by progress isn't linear. It's about what we do when that happens. We're going to talk about that more later in the video, but it's just putting that expectation out there to you guys. And it is a hard truth because we get so caught up on that runner's high of being on that PB train. And when it doesn't happen, it can be a little bit of a shock to the system. So it's really important to keep grounded and understand that not every run and not every training block and not every race is going to be as you'd expect it to be. And the second thing I want to talk about, and actually this is probably one of the first hard truths that I learned, is that not every run is going to be great. Now, I didn't start off running with a training plan. I just went out there and ran hard every single run because that's what I thought I had to do to get fitter and faster. And I really learned the hard way there, with some runs feeling okay, some good, and some really, really bad. And then when I started to get into a better training plan and learn a bit more about running slow to run fast and how to periodize training and all of that stuff, things started to settle down. But we still have those days that we just can't explain that go really bad. Now, sometimes we can go, yeah, I didn't really eat much before my run, or I didn't eat a lot the day before, so I'm probably under fueled today. Maybe I'm dehydrated, it's really hot, or maybe I'm overtrained, maybe I'm doing too much. There are reasons as to why we can have bad runs here and there, but there are some times when we just do everything right and on the day our body doesn't play ball. And actually there's nothing more frustrating than when that happens, because we get home and we go, I thought I was fitter than that. I know I'm fitter than that. So why the heck did that just happen? And it can be such a head scratcher. For my advice to you out there, when we get those, and especially if you're a beginner runner, just don't worry, bank it, move on to the next run. These runs happen. Sometimes we just can't overthink it. Sometimes we just got to put it to bed, move on, and get out the door for the next run. So the third thing I learned to do very quickly was to savor those high moments and also embrace the low moments. So what do I mean by that? Again, I'm talking about when you get a PB at a race, embrace it, because when we do start to progress in our running journey, when we do start to get to the point where we've maximized the number of hours that we can train in a week, and then we start to have to really train smarter, not harder, and we have to periodize our training and do training blocks and all of that sort of stuff, we should never take for granted a PB. And also we have to embrace the lows. This is something I never used to do. And actually when it finally smacked me in the face that I needed to actually embrace those lows and learn from them, that's when I started to become a much better runner. And it is a hard truth to learn, because often I used to come back from a race or a training run or whatever it was and feel really down in the dumps, really angry, really frustrated. And it used to play on my mind for a long time. Now, actually, what we need to do as runners is turn that negativity into maybe asking questions as to why it happened. But then if we don't have those answers, just like I said, we embrace it, we bank it, we move on to the next one, because we know potentially it just wasn't our day. And this all comes back to knowing that progress isn't linear. We are not always going to have those perfect runs. We're not always going to have those perfect days. But actually, what we need to do as runners, and something that we really all should do, is just when a PB comes around, embrace it. You never know when you're going to get your next one, and when you have a low moment, you've got to take it and use it as fire to add to that fuel. Use it as fuel to add to the fire, because ultimately, if we dwell on it too much and get frustrated, it can really knock our confidence. Number 4, our energy levels in general can really be affected by running, depending on what we're doing in our training. If we're heavy into a training block, whatever that training block might be, and whatever advanced level that we are at as runners, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, Everything can take its toll on us, and what that can do is negatively have an effect on our energy levels throughout the day and day-to-day stuff. We can often find that you see a lot of running memes on the internet out there. You go for feeling ready for a long run in the morning, by the afternoon you're absolutely crashed out on the sofa. It is true, and these things happen. They're meant for tongue-in-cheek purposes and to laugh at. But deep down, the reality is that that is often sometimes the way that we can feel. Now, I feel the most like that when I'm deep in a marathon training block and sometimes in a half marathon block. And it also then depends on like sleep and how much recovery we're getting and all of that. If our training load is adding up and we're not recovering enough, then that can also have a detrimental effect. But what we've just got to remember is if we do commit to a training block and we start to get partway through a training block and we're feeling a bit fatigued, we have to understand that energy levels around running in terms of day-to-day life, work, family, all of that stuff can really suffer, and that really is a hard truth to learn. And number 5, finding that balance is tough. This is something that I have really fallen foul of so many times, and it is a hard truth because for me, as someone that runs 6 days a week, I'd love to be able to kick on and push harder and push more, and hopefully at some point in the future that will become available to me. But right now I have to kind of understand, as I'm sure a lot of you guys do that are running maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week or whatever it is, and you want to take that next step, finding the balance is really, really tough to add those extra runs in. Now for me, I have to get a lot of my runs done early doors before the school run, and what that often means is that I have to get up super early, get out the door, get my run done, get the school run done, and then get on with the day. So then finding that balance with the energy levels that we just talked about and not completely flagging at bedtime and having to go to bed before the kids go to bed so that you can be ready for the next day and not interrupt too much into family life is a really tough thing to do. Great example here, I remember last summer or last year at some point, I was getting up at like 5:30 every single day, and after 2 or 3 weeks, it just was not sustainable for me. I'd crash and burn, I'd have a massive burnout for 2 or 3 days until I could recover, and then I'd have to eat a load and sleep a load until I could go again. And I tried that on the bounce 2 or 3 times and I just could not make it stick. And what I then had to do is go, right, do you know what? It's not physically possible for you to just get up that early and continue with your life, with school runs, with work, with family, and get up at 5:30 every single day and go into bed at a later time. You've either got to pull your bedtime in and interrupt family, or that's not very fair, so you're going to have to work something out where you don't get up early for every single run. I finally found that balance. I was able to tinker with a few of them, and now I've got it right. As I'm sure a lot of you guys do out there, it's about finding that balance as to how many times you can get up early, when you can go out late, without interrupting too much other stuff around the outside. And point number 6, this one hurts. Sometimes, just sometimes, dietary changes are required. Now, I don't mean like permanently, but for me, as I've become a little bit more of a serious runner, I understand I've really got to fuel my workouts and runs, and long runs in particular, much better than what I used to be able to really get the most out of myself. Especially if I'm doing a long run workout, I've been known to sit there and be the only one in the family on a Friday night that doesn't have a takeaway on my lap, but I have a bowl of rice and whatever else I'm eating, a bit of carbs, a bit of protein, stuff that's not going to mess me up for the next day whilst I'm sat watching everyone else have a takeaway. It hurts, but sometimes you've just got to do it. And for me as well, like as a good example, I have a bit of a gluten intolerance, so anything with wheat and yeast and stuff like that in it, I just completely avoid anyway, or I avoid where I can, and I make sure 100% that that is always before a long run workout or a workout. And I just have to eat foods that I know that are going to give me good energy. I mean, this doesn't particularly apply so much to a beginner when we're doing shorter runs, but when you're out there, especially marathon training, out there for a lot of time on feet, clocking up those miles and kilometers, I've got to make sure that my stomach's okay. I don't want to be having pit stops every 5 minutes. I've been there, I've done that, and it's horrible. It's a horrible feeling. It completely takes away any joy and pride that you get from that run. So yeah, I often find that dietary changes are sometimes required, depending on how lucky or unlucky you are with your stomach. And point number 7, running can be expensive. Believe it or not, I love it when people say, running's a free sport, just lace up some shoes and get out the door. But the more serious you get into running, the more expensive it can become. And I'm being completely honest with you, it ends up becoming probably one of the more expensive hobbies that you could possibly take up. Now, I appreciate, and I've got to put my hands up here, I put running shoe reviews out here on YouTube. Companies send me shoes, I review them, and I guess in a way that's kind of influencing people to either buy or not buy, depending on what you think my opinion is or how I tell you what the shoe's like. So I get it, I am probably part of the problem there, but for myself as well, if I am a consumer of YouTube content and a consumer of social media and just a consumer of running in general, I understand how expensive this can be. So at the moment I'm trying to experiment with a few bits and pieces in terms of caffeine intake and gels and stuff. I've got some races coming up and I'm thinking about potentially experimenting with taking some gels on a half marathon. So I know I've got to practice. So I placed an order for 6 Morton calf gels the other day, and my word, that set me back quite a lot of money. I think it was nearly 20 quid just for 6 gels. These are the sorts of things that cost the money, the things that we think, oh, running's a free sport, it's all right. It's like, are your shoes okay to run in? Even if we just have one pair of shoes, we can often be spending a fair bit of money on those. And then it might be a race day pair of shoes, and then it might be a speed day shoe, whatever it might be. These things cost money. Running watches, they're not cheap. Fueling, all of that stuff, clothes, it can all add up. So yeah, don't be fooled when someone says running's a free sport. It's really not. And number 8, I want to wrap things up on a bit of a positive. So not really hard truth, but more of a home truth. From me to you, enjoy the process. Whether it's training blocks, whether you love training to progress yourself, whether you love training to push yourself further, whether you run for health benefits, whether you run for the social aspect, for a park run on a Saturday, whatever it is, enjoy the process. Never take for granted putting one foot in front of the other. This is something that I learned very quickly during my running journey, that when I'd start to get fitter, a lot of people I talked to maybe outside of the running circle said, oh, you're so lucky, I've got knee pain, I've got this, I've got that I can't run, and I can't run for whatever reason. And I go, actually, do you know what? Regardless of what's going on in a training block and anything else, I should be so darn lucky to be able to put one foot in front of the other out there. And I often have little gratitude moments when I'm out going, man, I can run at this pace, at this heart rate, and this feels really good. And I'm so grateful that my body is allowing me to do this, because who knows, the next day you might never be able to do it again for whatever reason. So always be in the moment, always be present. I know it's a bit cheesy, but it is so important to just appreciate everything that me and you guys can do. So there we go, those are my 8 hard truths. Well, probably 7 hard truths and 1 home truth there. For runners out there, I love to produce really positive content, but obviously there are times as runners that we can feel a bit negative, can feel a bit dejected, and it's really important to talk about them, because I think a lot of us can sometimes feel a bit on our own when we're feeling these feelings, and it's really important for me to share them, because I think so many of us can relate to these hard truths. But as always, we all know that it's such a fun sport, and with all of this, we get the reward at the end of it, whether it's PBs, whether it's the social, whether it's health benefits, whatever it might be, we all do it for the love of the sport. So I'd love to hear what you guys think on this topic and what your hard truths are that you've learned. Drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this subject. Hopefully some really good answers down there. And I'll make sure I leave a link at the end of this video to a couple more positive videos that are talking a little bit how to progress yourself as a runner. That's it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do give it a like, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content. I'll see you in the next one. Until then.